session on the topic child safety and how do we deal with differently abled children. This kind of cases may occur to us when we visit our youth schools. Okay? So we have with us Smita Naik, who will be delivering on this particular topic. Okay? She has a sound understanding of how to deal with children and how to how children behave. So she will put some light on this different topics. So teacher Smita, so what do you guys think?
Good evening, everybody. Thank you, sir, for the nice introduction. Okay, so we are going to now switch gears. We don't need a computer for the next session. We don't need books and pens. So if you can just put everything away, and just focus. You may just turn this side. Just be comfortable wherever you are. Turn. The last person might need to just go a little behind so they can make space. So quickly, everybody can just face this side. Just leave your books, pens, everything. All can see me very clearly from wherever you are. Yes? Okay, so you just finished with a session which was heavily about artificial intelligence, about machines, and we've been talking a lot about, Sir has been talking a lot about artificial intelligence, and when I was actually listening to a lot of things that he was saying, I was thinking to myself that we are now going to have switch gears and actually talk about human behavior, and that's exactly what the session is about. So let's not look at the topic right away. First, I just have 3 questions for you, so we'll start with that. My first question is, how many people have experience in teaching at high school? Just your hands right on top, okay, like this, straight. Okay, high school, okay. How many at higher secondary and above? Okay. And how many aspiring and excited to be teachers in schools? How many aspiring and excited to play this role of a teacher in schools? I need your hands right on top because that your response depends whether I continue or not. So please, I've come prepared to talk to you, so I don't want to go back without doing this. All hands. So my team, can you just check if I have everybody with me? So I can start? Okay, good. Thank you. So basically it's storytelling. Not to put you to sleep, but just to make sure that you're wide awake and to keep you awake with this thought. And what we are going to basically do in this session is just have these thoughts. So we'll start with sketching a very simple story. Okay, I'm sorry, you will see that my presentation is very drab. You will not find colors except for the green that I've used. Also because green signifies that it's all okay. We're talking about something that's all okay. Otherwise, you will not find any pictures, and why, that I will answer only at the end of the session. Okay, so we're developing our story. We are starting with our script. So what do you generally have in a story? We've all got stories. Characters, yes, we have characters, and then just the characters, emotions, people that side, characters, emotions, and the characters are all just by themselves. Just by themselves. So there is Tom and there is Jerry, and he's there. And you find that interesting and you enjoy that in their own cases. What? Yes. So what makes it more interesting is the interaction, right? So we're going to look at these 3 aspects. So we are going to first look at the characters, the 2 key characters that we're going to look at today. First, the teacher, then the learner or the child or the student that we call. And then we will see how these 2 coexist. in an environment. Because yes, that's exactly what happens when they come to learn. So you have a teacher and a student who coexist in an environment that is conducive for learning. Yes? Are we ready to go? So all of you are going to help me stitch this story, and then at some point maybe make that story your own. Okay, so let's begin with the process. Is there anyone who doesn't want to do this? You all want to have your own story at the end of the day? Yes? Okay. So my topic says child safety, but in order to understand this, it's very, very important to understand the role of a teacher. It's very important to understand who is this learner. Do I know him or her? And then you have to understand what kind of interactions take place. Once you know this, then we'll be able to understand why we are talking about child safety. So I'm going to come to child safety, but maybe a little later. So first, let's just get acquainted with the first play. Now before I start, I have some ground rules. Being a teacher, I always do this with my students as well. So, and I'm going to read these out because they are very, very important before we start. So be aware that this talk may result in some emotional reactions because we are talking about people, we are talking about roles that we will be playing or being played, we are talking about a student. It's very important that when we are having discussions that you have to remember that your well-being and the well-being of others is something that you have to always keep in mind when you discuss. Please make a commitment to participate and contribute. I mean, that's something that I'm looking forward to in this particular session. And also respect the opinion of others. So I see this session as a very, very interactive session because I've seen a lot of people here already have come from teaching background. And others who may not have done it formally, we still have always interacted with a child or a student. Okay? And then finally, something that's most important to me, please maintain confidentiality. So if there's something that we are discussing, it could be an incident, it could be something related to a person, let's keep it here. Let's not use names. And finally, very, very important when you talk about people, just to make sure that we do it with respect. Can we agree to these ground rules before we proceed? Yes? Okay, so we are ready to start. So our first character in the story. So it's a middle school teacher. I'm being very, very specific here. I say a middle school teacher. I've just asked you all, and many of you have been teaching high school, high secondary, graduates. Now why am I focusing on middle school? Can someone tell me, why have I put that word? I have just said teacher. Why middle school? Exactly. So everyone is here with me? You agree? Yes? So your target population is very, very, you're very specific. You know exactly that these are my children, my students, or these are the people that I have to cater to. So when I go to school, this is exactly the kind of people that I am going to interact with. So that's why it's very important to remember that we are going to interact with a middle school learner. So what is your role as a teacher? Of course, we all know that we need to be a very skilled educator. Now what does this mean, skilled educator? There are two parts to this. It's one, just being very, very good at your content, which means having all the expertise that you need as far as your subject matter is concerned. And that's something that you started doing this morning, right? Ayush sir has been training you guys with regards to the subject content, right? But also very, very important is not just knowing your knowledge and understanding of skills that you have, but also how you transfer it to the child in the best possible manner that the child will be able to grasp, understand and learn. So that's why when we talk about skills, when we talk about expertise as far as our subject is concerned, please let us remind ourselves that it is both. It is the content and it is the pedagogy. That is how we transfer or translate this knowledge to the child. And always keep in mind, we are talking about a child who is a middle school learner. Right? Apart from being a skilled educator, what else do you see yourself? You have some things on the screen, but I just want to hear it from you all. What else? What other role do you see yourself in? Just imagine you're going to a school. Are you only going to teach your subject matter? what else would you be doing? Do you see yourself as a guide? Yes, do you? Do you see yourself as playing a role of a motivator? Yes? We all believe this? And why? Why? Why you have to be in a role of a motivator or a guide? Because you are talking about a middle school learner. You are talking about a child who is just understanding, getting an understanding of what the world is all about. Yes, so when we talk about the learner, we will see what are those peculiar characteristics, why this becomes very, very important for us. So yes, apart from being a skilled educator, you have to make sure that you are a guide and a motivator, because you have to facilitate that development of unique talents which are happening, and that's exactly the time. So you are coming in contact with the learner exactly at that juncture when he is developing his unique talents and qualities. So you are being a part of their formative years, the early years, which are very, very important for the child. It's the make or break time. So you have to develop the passion for learning, because that's the time they're just understanding. That's the time they're understanding that, okay, this is something that I could try and do. Before that, maybe as a kid, the parent or the teacher would say, do this, the child will do it, and it's done. They've not yet started developing their independent thinking. So this is the age that they start developing this. So that's why you have to tap on it. As a motivator, you have got to be a positive influencer. You have got to be a role model. And you will be a role model for them, because that's the age when they start looking at people as role models. When they idolize people. So when you know this, it's very important for you to know how you conduct yourself in front of them. So you see, you're playing a very, very important role. Not just being a skilled educator, but you're playing a very big role beyond that, which you don't even realize sometimes. So that's why we see how important it is for us to know what exactly we need to do and what exactly to expect from a child. And this whole session is basically about that. If we understand that, if we realize why we need to do it, what is it that we have to understand as far as the child is concerned, the entire process after that, the whole process of learning and understanding how to adapt to a situation becomes very, very easy. Right? So, while we are at this, I can just think of a very, very famous quote, and this is by George Bernard Shaw. Have you heard about him? He's a very popular novelist. He's also a Nobel Prize winner. And he said that to be, the sole hope of human salvation lies in teaching. So he believes that if there's something that can actually save humanity, then it is teaching. And teaching, obviously, means teachers. And why not? If you look at India, in our civilization, India also believes and puts teachers in the highest pedestal. And if you remember, this morning Sai Sir spoke about Guru Deva Bhava. That exactly comes from our civilization, because that's where we keep our teachers. So how you could see this is because there's so much of power, there's so much of authority that a teacher comes along with, that it's very important to understand that there is also immense responsibility that this particular role brings in. Because as a teacher, especially as a middle school teacher, you are playing a very, very crucial role in the life of a child. When the child is just growing up. Apart from the parent, you are the next influencer in the life of the child. You are a part of the whole process of where the personality is getting shaped. Now, many may argue that, okay, in today's world, maybe this is not applicable because of the digital media, the internet, there's so much of resources, the child is actually accessing information on its own, already knows a lot of things. So maybe this is not true. But let's look at it more closely, and you will realize that, in spite of having all the information around, the child is still not at that age where it can understand, what is the right information. So, you still have to play the role of a positive influencer. You are still a role model for the child. Maybe you are not actively shaping their personality, but you are being a part of the whole process where they are molding themselves. So, whenever you think of how the digital media is playing a big role in the lives of a child, please also remember However, that there are certain characteristics as far as children are concerned which still limits them. So they still are not maybe equipped with making those decisions that adults would be able to make at that age. And why exactly? We will come to that a little later when we see the profile of a child. Yes? Here, any questions till here? Does this make sense? Do you see yourself here? Are you getting your first character ready? Yes? Okay. So that's quickly to put up there what I've just said. So we teachers are very, very important. Why? Because we are part of the child's community and environment. The child is interacting with you on a daily basis. And hence, what does it mean to you? We spoke about responsibility. Hence, you're obligated to promote their rights and to protect them. So we are slowly coming to our plot. Slowly we are going to talk about child safety. We are role models. So what does that mean? Okay, I'm a role model for the child because the child at that age looks up for it. Does it mean anything to me? Yes, it does. It means you must set the norms. What do you understand when I say we have to set the norms? What are norms? Rules. Right? What does it mean when we say we have to set the norms? We set the norms for whom? For children? Yes, somebody said children. What about others? We set norms for ourselves. Yes, how many agree for ourselves? Raise your hands. Quick. Yeah, I like this. Being a teacher. Okay, yes, that's absolutely true. So when we talk about setting norms, it's not just for the child, it's for ourselves as well. So we have to remember this. So role model just doesn't put us there, it puts us in a very, very responsible position. We have been given this authority and responsibility. So when you have so much of authority, when you have so much of power, when you have so much of, it also brings in a lot of responsibility. And that's the reason we are talking about how we are responsible for developing that safe environment for the child when the child is interacting with you. Make sense? Can we move on? Yes? So you all see yourselves in a very important position, in a very important role? Yes? Okay. So it's time to now just familiarize ourselves with the second key player, the second character, which is the student. Yeah, so we may refer it to as a student, as a learner, as a child. But here again, we are being very specific that it's the middle school learner. So let's try and understand what this middle school characterization is all about, because I'm sure we want to know a little more why they are called middle school and from where all of this comes. So there are many terms that are floating around. So you may have also heard the term adolescent. Have you heard? Yes? They refer to a certain group, a certain age criteria. The kids there are referred to as adolescents. Anybody can tell you if you have some understanding who you think these adolescents are? Any idea? Usually they are referred to as troublemakers. Parents would call them as troublemakers, quarrelsome age. Psychologists call them the gang age. Teachers call them the elementary age. Yeah. So the World Health Organization, or the WHO, has defined adolescent as a person who is within the age group of 10 and 19. Of course, there are various other definitions and they're used for various other purposes, like if it's child labor, it's used in a different context. But generally, the universally accepted definition is it's basically a child or a person between 10 and 19. Again, this 10 and 19 is quite a wide spectrum because there are a lot of changes that are happening, within that child. So again, adolescent is then divided into the early adolescents, the middle adolescents, and the late adolescents. So what we are really interested, what do you think we should be interested in, which category, which of those three? Early, middle, or late? Early, middle, late? Yeah, so they'll be early and they would just be transitioning into the middle age. So middle adolescent. So you see, it's a very, very, very critical juncture at which you're finding or meeting or interacting, this profile of people. So having understood this, having understood that, there is this profile and we call them as adolescents, there is a reason why they have been given a grouped into this, and there are a whole lot of interventions that are worked around for this age group, because this age group is the most critical, and I put it here in one sentence, because young adolescent body undergoes more developmental change than at any other time. So you can imagine, of course, except 0 to 2 years, that's when physically a lot of changes also take place. But barring that 0 to 2 years of age, the most changes take place actually in this particular age group, and that's the reason these are considered as the most important age group. So anything that needs to be targeted is actually targeted towards this adolescent group. Clear? Why? So we are now talking about developmental changes. Maybe we are not really sure what these developmental changes are. Anyone here is familiar? What kind of changes? The school teachers? Can you help me? Are you aware of what kind of changes this could be? Because these are very important. You have to understand this first. Biological, psychological, okay, good, okay. Yes, ma'am? Somebody else? Hormonal changes, yes, oh my god, very, very important. Yeah, so there are basically all kinds of changes happening, okay? And as teachers, I think maybe we cannot go into the entire list, but what I've done is I've just tried to concise a few characteristics based on a few changes that are very important to us, which we should understand and which we should know as teachers, so that we can accordingly adapt our classrooms or adapt our behavior towards these learners. So let me move on to these categories. So first I'm going to talk about intellectual development. We've heard about intelligence in Sir's session just some time back, but it was artificial intelligence. Here we are talking about human behavior. Very, very unpredictable, right? No algorithm, nothing. Yes, how you wish you could. You would imagine once you're in the class, how I wish I could just clone. But there is no clone concept here. It's just, we are talking about human behavior. So, when I talk about intellectual development, maybe at this stage, since it's very new, the concept is very new for you, these are some key things that you could just remember and go by to start with. So, just understand that they are interested now in real life experiences, and they are now interested in authentic learning opportunities. So, why is this happening is because this is the time when they are just starting to have developed their abstract and independent thinking skills. So it's just happening now. So as it's happening, they have now started thinking of things beyond what somebody tells them. So that's the reason, and actually that's where most of the problems come up as far as this age group is concerned. So they want some real life experiences because they've started thinking. They're trying to understand what is happening. They're also, of course, because of that, they start getting bored with traditional subjects. So they want something that's very experiential, and they are good as far as learning through that method is concerned. They are also very inquisitive about adult behavior, and that's the reason it all then ties to role models, idolizing, imitating adults, imitating peers who are older than them. So you will see a 6th standard child wants to behave or is trying to behave like a 10th standard child, is heavily influenced. So all this is basically because there are a lot of changes that are happening, and we have to understand this. So this is mainly to sensitize ourselves that, this is where the child is as far as the developmental phase is concerned, and it's very important to be aware when we come across certain kinds of behavior. So instead of just attributing it to some X or Y factor, just try and think that, it could be something that's related to this. Can we move on to the next one? Then, very important domain, your model development. So, because the child has started thinking and started understanding abstract things, it starts to find their own attitudes, beliefs and values. So, it no longer ties to everything that the parents or the teachers say. And they start moving away, that's why, from accepting their parents' ideas. There's also a transition from egocentrism to considering others, because as a child it's always about me, I'm hungry, I want food, I'm this. But now they've started understanding people around them, so they will start understanding peer relationships. They'll start understanding that they have to work with others. So it's a very, very interesting phase, and we will see how we can use this in the best possible way when implementing our curriculum. They also start considering complex issues, but they really don't know how to cope with them. So they get easily excited with some new things. So you see that somebody typically in this age group is excited about trying and doing everything and say, okay, no, we want to do this. But you might see that they need a constant motivation, otherwise what will happen is they will never get things done. So they are somebody that they want to start with everything, but then at the end of it, they cannot finish, any of those. So because they're typically in that age group, because they are at this point where they just started to think, and there is so much for them to think about. So there's so many distractions. So this is something that we have to keep in mind when we're dealing with the child. And then of course, another very important domain, the social and emotional development. So there's a strong need for them at this age to belong, and especially belong to their peers. So you will find the peer pressure, you will find this whole gangism. So that's why the parents would call it the gang age. This becomes a trend. You'll always see them in groups, always their hands on the shoulders, moving around in groups, because that's the need that they feel when they are at this juncture in their life. So peer approval becomes very, very important. So you'll always find that they want to do what the friend says and not what the parents say. So the parents really find this a problematic age because of these reasons, but it's nothing to do with the parent per se. It's not that the child has some grudge against the parent. It's just the phase that they are in, and which will of course pass. So they also start experimenting with new behaviors. They also start testing limits, and this is something that you would see in your classroom as well. There are times when they would be actually testing your patience. They would be actually testing a lot of things. So please remember that at that point that maybe this is not anything to do with you as per se. It's not something personal against you that the child has, but it could just be that it's a part of their growing up. So if we remember all these things at that point, it becomes our response to the situation can be completely different, and as a result of that, the result could be completely different. Yes? Makes sense? Yes? Something that you're open to? Yes? Can we move on? Yeah? So now we've seen two players. We've seen the teacher. We've seen the student or the learner, both in the middle school. And now, as you've discussed, as you just told me, we have to see how they coexist, because there's always going to be an interaction. And this is the interaction that somewhere we need to kind of control and adapt to. So what happens when these two meet in an environment that is actually for learning? So it's important to remember that when these two players interact, there is an objective, and the objective is there is some amount of learning that has to happen. So because of that, it's more important that you focus more on the existence and the interaction. So let's look at that very briefly. So when these two players are together, so they are on the same stage, what happens? The teacher is, where is the teacher's position? All of you see teacher as a position authority? All of you see that you have authority? From where has this come? From where has this authority come? Okay. But how do you get so much of authority? Okay. You have knowledge, but if you are not teaching the student, would you have the authority? So, from the position, yes, thank you sir. So it comes from position. So that position gives you so much of authority. And when you have so much of authority, there's also so much of power that comes into play. And because this brings in a lot of power, and there is a natural imbalance in the power because your learner is in the dependent position. The child is in a dependent position. The child actually is somebody who needs a very supportive environment. So because this is a very natural relation, so it's not that it's been created that way. So because of this relation, what happens is there is a natural imbalance. So please remember, I'm referring to the word natural. It's a natural imbalance. We can't do anything about it. So there is an imbalance between the power that the teacher holds and the position where the child is. what we have to understand, it makes us, or it puts us in a more important or a more responsible position. Because the minute you see somebody as a dependent, you see somebody who needs support, you need somebody who needs care, it means that you are in that responsible position who's supposed to be providing this when you are actually teaching or interacting with the child. So apart from providing the knowledge, skills and whatever else that you're supposed to do, you have to make sure that it happens in a safe environment. So right now, we've moved on to our plot, which is child safety. Yes? Any questions still here? Is this making sense? Do you find this very abstract? You can relate this. If you have any questions, you can always ask. You can just raise your hand. Okay? If there's some concept that you've not understood, please clarify. Because this is very, very important, because based on this, I'm assuming you will be interacting with your learners or the students. Yes, okay. So, let's talk about child safety. And before I switch the slide, what do you understand by child and safety? So we know who's a child. Who's the child? Student, okay. Student in your graduate last year or your masters is a child. Student below, yeah, so any person below, so generally the universally accepted definition would be anybody below 18, right, is considered as a child. So again, we are going to look at a lot of rules and laws that are formulated for the child safety, but before that, just remember that the universally accepted definition would be a child would be anybody who is below the age of 18, regardless of what kind of a role he plays even before he's 18. So it doesn't matter. It could be somebody who's already married and has a child, but he's still a child. Okay, so anyone below the age of 18. Now this has been coined by the United Nations Convention, which works on rights for children. So UNCRC, that's the agency primarily responsible for formulating laws and rules for child safety and child rights. And all of the other laws that actually are worked upon by the independent countries and states actually derive from here. Okay, so we also have laws put in place in India. We are going to look at those very briefly because we don't have much time. But before that, just to talk about is safety. So safety is basically protecting your students from danger, risks or injuries. But that is not all. Safety also means safeguarding and promoting welfare. So please remember this second statement. It is not just about protecting from danger and risks, it's also about promoting welfare. So promoting welfare is part of you making sure that you are working on child safety. So we are very clear now who's a child, what we mean by child safety, and there are some laws already put in place. So the Indian Constitution guarantees every child right protection. There are several laws for especially for children, and there are laws for children who have specific difficulties. We'll come to that in the next part of the session. And these are a whole lot of things. You can always use Google and check what these are. We don't have the time to go through, but of course I want to highlight this corporal punishment. And corporal punishment, we have again the Goa Children's Act 2003, wherein children in all schools in Goa are legally protected from corporal punishment under the state law. So very, very important for us to remember this. This is very, very serious. This slide is very serious, but it's just that we have to understand the seriousness. I'm not making it very serious, but you have to understand and get a gist of how serious this is when you're interacting with the child. If we have some time after the entire presentation, I could quickly talk about corporal punishment if we have the time. Yes? So, PAW plays a very, very important role. So I'm going to, but because this slide is very busy, I'm going to skip the slide for now. Again, if we have some time, we'll come back to this. So there are two things we could talk about: corporal punishment, just for you to understand what it is, and how power dynamics minds play a very, very important role in how we conduct ourselves when it comes to our child. Okay? So let's move on to what we can do. We've seen what the global agencies are doing. We've seen what the whole lot of laws that are in place, what the government is doing. But we are interacting with the child on a daily basis. So what is it that we are supposed to do? So very important as teachers is we have to be open to learning. And I remember just the previous session, Ayush sir was giving you some homework. And he mentioned something. And he said, find out this. And I am a teacher and I don't know everything. So that is very, very important. I picked up and I wanted to reiterate that. And he said, I am a teacher and I don't know everything. This is something that we all should try and understand what this means. Because as Saish sir mentioned this morning, the minute we say we are teachers, we believe that we know everything. And just to keep that belief and just to keep that aura, what we keep doing is we keep saying that we know everything, and that's how we portray ourselves when it comes to a child. So it's okay if you don't know sometimes. That doesn't mean that you don't prepare yourself. Of course, you have to make sure you get the expertise that you need as far as the subject matter is concerned. I'm talking about both content and pedagogy. But there could be times that you are in a position where you don't know. And it's absolutely okay to say, I don't know, I will check and I'll get back to you. So that's the first very important point. Then also make your children feel worthwhile when they attend your class. So treat them with respect. Mutual respect is very important. Just because the child is in a dependent position doesn't mean that you can behave as the way you want. So just keep this in mind. Giving respect. Again, my slide on power has a lot of things that we'll talk about respect. We will come to that if we have some time. But it's important that you respect. And respect doesn't mean that you have to be very nice to the child. No. When you say respect, it's just actually how you conduct yourself in front of the child. It's not what you say always, but how you behave and how you treat the child without even using words. So let's try and do that. It's very important to create a relationship of trust, because remember, students treat you or see you in a position which is maybe something that they do after their parents. So in a very responsible position, in a very crucial position. So it's very important to maintain their trust. So when they share things with you, make sure that you listen amicably. Make sure that you don't you maintain confidentiality as far as possible. If you know that you will not be able to maintain confidentiality, please let the child know about it, so the child is not shocked when the child gets to know from somewhere else. Be very observant, be a very good listener. Why observant? Because only when you're observant, you will know, okay, how your child is growing and progressing. Apart from that, you will also be able to identify problems. And it's not just enough to identify problems, you have to find out what is the root cause of it. As teachers, our instinct is the minute we see a problem, we just want to attack the problem. And we don't want to know from where it's come and what has happened. So let's stop for a while and understand that it's very important for us to observe, find what the problem is, and then find the root cause of it, treat the cause and not the child. Yes, treat the cause and not the child. So these are few words I want you to carry back home. These are very, very important words, and I want you to implement this as far as possible. Use positive reinforcement techniques. Say no to discrimination. You will have children coming from various sectors, various backgrounds. So please make sure that we don't discriminate them. We treat everyone equally, because that's how the child sees. When the child enters there, the child sees you in a particular position. So we have to make sure that we don't discriminate any child in your classroom. This could be based on a whole lot of things. We don't have the space and time to discuss that. But as you interact with students, I'm sure you'll be able to pick up on what exactly these various things could be, where you could be partial. Okay? Avoid negative stereotyping. We often do this and we don't even realize. So just avoid this as far as possible, and avoid using this labeling, especially in front of other students or in front of other staff members or anybody. For that matter, even when you're interacting with the child, avoid name calling as far as possible. And the best way, I will tell you, to create a connect with your child, with your student, is to know the child with the first name. You just do that and you will see there is a big difference between the response that you get from the child and the whole interaction that you have with that child. So as far as possible, that would be the first step. If you really want to create a bond, the first step would be to try and learn their names and then refer to them as so and so and not Arey, Shu. No, that doesn't really work in creating a bond. Be very democratic but not unstructured. What this means is you can give some responsibilities and freedom to your students as far as doing certain things are concerned, and you will have to be doing that because that's the kind of subject that you are going to be handling. But then please remember that being democratic doesn't mean that you're not structured. You would still have structures in place, you will still have a lesson plan, you will still have A, B, C things to do, and you would go by that. Right? Make sense? Can you move on? So what does all this mean? It means that you have to engage with the child at many different levels. And as you're exploring the role of a teacher, as you're exploring the role or a profile or the characteristics of the learner and how they are coexisting and how they're interacting, you would see that there are a whole lot of things that you have to look at. So basically, you are going to engage at many different levels, and why? So that you create and strengthen a very protective environment for the child. Yes? Do we believe in this? Yes? Do we believe in this? Or we still think that, okay, my job is to go and teach. I'm going to teach them how to do this AI, I'm going to teach them how to work on picture blocks, and I'm done for the day. Are we thinking on those lines? Are we open to what we are now looking at? We are stitching our own story. Please remember, you're part of this story. It's going to be your story very soon. Yeah? And to end this part, of course, I want to put this quote up. Can someone just help me with this? Say it loudly so everybody can hear. Okay, now can everybody just say this once? All of you. Okay, so this is by a very famous again, a novelist and a writer, Bob Talbot, and he says that good teachers are costly, but bad teachers cost more. I want you to think about this, reflect on this statement, because this statement says a lot of things. Yes? So that's basically the end of the first part of my session. So how much time do I have? And we're going to quickly move. Yeah, sure. Thanks. Okay, so I have 12 minutes and I'm going to quickly move on to the next part. Differently abled children. Have you heard this phrase? Yes? Where? Can someone tell me in which context? Where have you heard this? Disability. Okay, any more words? Special children. Very good. Okay. Physically challenged, very good. Anything else?
Children with special needs.
Children with special needs, good, yes. Yes. Okay, great, thank you. So, we see that there are various terms and phrases used for this particular group of people. We normally refer to them as differently abled, and we don't use the word disability anymore, because why do you think we don't use disability anymore quickly? Yes, negative stereotype, discourages. I love this audience now. Yes. Anything else? So do you know any other word apart from differently able that is being used in a positive way? Special children. Okay. So these are basically, you refer to them as special children because we believe that they have special needs. And from there you have a whole lot of words that come up. So it's very important to know these terms because a lot of these terms actually are used interchangeably, and when you use them interchangeably it often gives rise to a lot of confusion and misunderstanding, and then we don't know what is happening. So that's the reason we were just trying to pull out all possible words that we use in this context. So just for the sake of a formal definition, what exactly this means is it's basically an umbrella term that covers or is covering impairments, activity limitations and participation restrictions. So what we are really talking about, that this is a group of children who have problems because of which they are not able to participate as another child in that same age group would have or will. And again, because of this kind of impairment or because of this limitation, they are not able to actually participate in activities. So it limits their participation and their involvement in activities because of a certain impairment or because of a certain problem that they have as far as using certain parts of their body or their mind is concerned, right? So that's the universal definition, or it's an umbrella term that we use. But what this really means for teachers and us teachers, let's focus on that now. So for teachers, children with disabilities have reduction in the range of variety of learning experiences, and this is due to their disabilities. So because they have issues, what happens is their learning capacities, their learning experiences are different from that of a child who is in the same age group. Please note, I am not using the word normal child. So I am not comparing this against a normal child because the definition of normalcy, that's very, very difficult. And the minute you say normal child, then it implies that these children are what? Abnormal, yes. So we are refraining from using that term normal. We use the word regular, right? Yes? Clear? Okay, and these children also have specific learning difficulties. So it's not that they are not able to do everything properly. It's just that there are some things maybe that they need additional help, or there are some things wherein they need special kind of environment. So we are going to look at these two categories. Before that, just why we need to focus on these children, because already there's a lot of focus as far as this group is concerned. So there are various laws, acts, regulations in place, again by global agencies, by the government of India and as well as the states. There is the Persons with Disabilities Act, which is, you must I think just Google and read about it, at least in brief, to understand what it all implies and tells you. We don't have the time to discuss, but I am urging you, please go and read a little about what is there so you get an understanding of why the focus is on these children. Okay? We just spoke about how right to education, especially for the 6 to 14-year-old, is a law. So what we are doing by accommodating these differently abled, or by treating some kind of focus on this, we are not doing anything special, because education is neither a privilege or favor. So we are not doing any favor. What we are basically doing, we're just providing them with a basic human right. We agree with this? So when you're going to have deal with the students, do you think you're going to be doing something special? You're going to do a favor on them? No. So now let's quickly look at how the entire system, the education system, is placed as far as the differently abled are concerned. So there are two kinds of schools. We have special schools and we have something called as inclusive schools. Again, we are now dealing with another new word. We've just come across so many different words, and then we have one more, we'll look at it, but let's first just look at the special schools. So special schools is where the accepted model is where children with very severe disabilities, so people who have severe vision impairment, hearing impairment, physical disabilities, very severe type, actually go to these kind of schools. So the impairment is very, very severe, and what happens here is the education component is apart from the general. So just look at the word, it's apart, it's different. And the teachers there are known as special educators who meet their educational needs. Have you come across these schools? Have you heard of these schools? Can you quickly tell me? Sanjay School, Ashadeep, fantastic. Very good. Diksha, yes. Gujarati Samaj School, yes. So there are a whole lot of schools, across Goa which cater to these kind of, these groups of children. Of course, you have special educators to meet because they have special needs. Then we have the inclusive schools. So basically here the model is that you have children with special learning difficulties. Basically their problem is with processing information, and just by looking at with the child, I'm sure you wouldn't know that this child has a problem with processing information. Here the education is a part of general education. So you see the difference between a part and a part. So they are a part of the general education, and of course because of that you have general classroom teachers who are meeting their educational needs. So do you think this is something that you want to look at more? Where do you see yourself in this? Are you here or you are not here at all in this slide? Are you part of a story or this is not your story? Is this your story anymore? Yes? Okay, so where do you see yourself? To the left or the right? To the right? Do you see yourself to the right? Yes? Fantastic. Okay. So that makes it easier for me to proceed to the next slide. Let's look at inclusive school. So what is an inclusive school? Basically it refers to the process of educating all children in their neighborhood school, and this is regardless of the nature of their disabilities. So you may have special needs. It could be a child with special needs, often called as a CWSN. It will still be a part of your school. So your school cannot reject that child because of the specific disability. So these are the children who are present in an inclusive school. They follow the same schedule as their classmates and they participate in the same age-appropriate academic classes. So they follow the same curriculum, they follow the same timetable. Everything is just as it is for another regular, not normal, regular child. And these children act, so basically these are children with special needs. So what we reinforce is they are children with special needs and they require special attention, and here we don't have a special educator doing it. It's the teacher who's responsible in providing this special attention. Make sense? Yes? So, do you call your school as inclusive school? So do you see yourself here in the inclusive school? Yes? So now let's get to the meaning of inclusive school then. Before that, just let's look at what is inclusive education. So since we spoke about education that's been provided by a general teacher, it's the general education. So the educational program for differently abled, the special children here, it's an integral part of general education system. So they are learning the same syllabus, the same curriculum, and the government has not actually developed another system within the general education. So why it's important to be inclusive? What is the meaning of inclusive? Inclusive. Including, no? Inclusive means including. So you are including even those students who have specific learning difficulties in your general stream. Why is that important? Do you think it's important? Yes? Wouldn't your life have been better if you didn't have to handle this additional group? You already have those characteristics I spoke about. You have so much to handle as far as the middle early adolescent. Yeah, and my extra. Guru Sasa. Why? What will happen if we just put them separately somewhere? Confidence, yes, because we know that child at that age learning from each other, they want peer acceptance, they want to be with peers, they want to work in teams, right? So all of that is required and they flourish well among their peers. So that's the reason we don't want to create another system within the education system. So which means we can very comfortably say, I know it's not a math class, but your regular school is actually an inclusive schools, and government is now promoting this, so making sure that most schools are now adopting this inclusive model and they are catering to all kinds of students. Very quickly, I will move on to my next slide. So just like we spoke about the characteristics of our middle school learners, let's look at some characteristics of these differently abled learners. It's very difficult to just look at them and say, because the child will not have maybe physical handicap or a disability, or it's not that you can clearly see that there's a vision problem or there's a hearing problem. This could be something that's to do with their mind, with their memory, which is not very obvious unless you observe the child for a long time. So, but there are some peculiar behaviors that you will see, and maybe when you see that, you can actually start watching that child a little more. So what are these things? They possess poor social skills. Now, it's not necessary that it's always the case. Sometimes it could be that a regular child also show these kind of skills or behaviors. They tend to have disruptive behavior, they may lack attention, or sometimes there's too much of attention to details which are not required at that moment. They may face trouble in remembering things, they may lack enthusiasm or interest in reading and writing. Usually they are at a slow pace compared to their normal or regular? No, regular. So, compared to the regular classmates. They may also face trouble following instructions given to them. So you will come across these kind of behaviors when you're interacting in the class, because you know you're working in a regular and inclusive school. So first, important to identify that. Then make sure that you are not directly implying this to somebody who you want to look at as a differently able or as a special child. So as I said, same kind of behaviors could be exhibited by a regular child as well. So that's why it's very important to look at the child in totality and not just look at 1, 2 and say, okay, tick, tick, and this is a child who has special needs. Make sense? Yes? Any questions still here? Now, how many minutes? Yeah, okay. I'm just going to quickly move on to the last slide. And yes. So what's your role as far as the differently abled are concerned? We've seen our role as far as a middle school teacher is concerned. The best way could be to use multisensory teaching approach, and this is not just only for children with special needs or children with difficulties. It also works well with all kinds of children, your regular children as well, where they learn using by using various senses. You know, so your lessons could be adapted. So being very flexible is important as a teacher. Be very adaptive and flexible. So if something is not working, slightly tweak it based on the need. So these are things that you will have to be very proactive at as far as the class is concerned. There's always a teacher will go prepared for a class, but there will be always some last minute changes based on the needs of the class. Be very observant. We spoke about this again when we spoke about the middle school learner. Prevent again negative stereotypical attitude. It could happen because you are now looking at differently abled children. Provide positive feedback by using effective praise. I'll come back to that. Before that, just to stay calm and have a smile on your face is very, very important. I mean, that's what the child comes to the class. So just have a smile on your face, and your entire classroom management strategies, you just don't even need to have to worry about it. Everything just falls in place when you come and walk in with that smile. So no matter what has happened just before you enter that classroom, when you enter the classroom, that smile is very, very important. So stay very calm. Your attitude and is actually something that the children would pick up very quickly. So they would soak in a lot of information that they just see. The more frustrated you get, the worse their attitude will get. Please remember this. So it's very, very important to be calm in any kind of situation that you may be in. I want to quickly focus on effective praise, because we all know what is praising. Praising. You're very good. No? Very good. Appreciate. Yeah. So how do we do that? Yeah, how to do that? Usually as teachers, maybe the teachers are very good. Well done, right? But effective praise is slightly beyond that. So effective praise is when you tell the child why you're praising. So very good for this behavior. They have to know why. So when you praise, or for that matter, when you correct the child, it's not don't do this. It never ends there, because the child doesn't know why you're telling him or her that. So effective praise is when you praise the child and say, I'm praising you for this behavior that you have exhibited, and this is what I feel about it. So it always remember, when you praise, it's not just very good, no, they may not understand. Okay? Similarly, when you give them feedback, it's also important to tell them. So when you correct them, it's very important to tell them what went wrong, what is it that you did not appreciate them. So don't do doesn't end, they will never understand, they will keep doing it and you get frustrated, and again their attitude will get worse, and it's a vicious cycle which will never end. Okay? So, any questions here? Yeah? Okay, so I'm running out of time, and I would just leave you with some resources here. So again, I think the first sketch of our story is ready, and this is now going to be your story. And the reason why I did not have any pictures, any color in my presentation is exactly because I want you to do that for your story. You have to work, you will have draft 1, draft 2. This is not the end of the session, this is just the beginning. This is just the beginning of learning to handle the entire new environment that you're going to be in. The learner, you've just seen what the learner looks like. So this is your story, you're going to work on this story, add pictures, add elements. You're going to give a story name, but I would just want to add something and allow me to do that. And next to your name, I would just say dot, 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 the beginning. So it's the beginning. That's how I would end this session. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Teacher Smita. Okay, and thanks for all the inputs that you have given and the insight that you have shared. All the participants over here.